Excuse me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Comics Della Morte, episode 113, Reign of Dracula with Les Garner, the amazing artist behind the comic. How you doing, sir? Welcome to the show for the first time.
I'm up past my bedtime, brother. I'm here, but
yeah. Most of the time I'm in bed pretty early myself, unless I'm trying to do some artwork.
Yeah,
but you probably know how that is.
Old enough that I keep old folks hours, so I'm usually up about crashing around 9.
Yeah. Right. So before we get into like the comic and everything and how you met Rich and pretty much the typical questions, your favorite like horse related stuff, just tell everybody, like, as a kid, what really made you to start drawing, and then we'll get into when you started falling in love with comics and the whole like fantasy and horror realm.
Very, very specifically, I come from Eastern Kentucky, and really come from kind of the bowels of Appalachia, and I was a farm kid. We had tobacco and cows. I had to milk cows when I was a little kid. Now this plays into how I got into this. And in the barn, there was a stack of old comics. And I would sit there with a cow's teat in my hand and a comic book on my leg. No joke. I'd sitting there looking. And I remember as a kid, when the other kids would start to play and be like, I'm Batman, I'm Superman, I'm Spider-Man, I'm blah, blah, blah. Well, I had noticed the credits. And when the other kids are saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, I'm like, as a little kid, I'd be like, I'm Neil Adams, Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
They're like, who's that? I'm like, it's the guy who made your ass.
Exactly.
So
I am your god.
Yeah, it was like, why, as a little kid, I was like, why would I want to play at being one of these guys when I can actually be the guy who makes it? So, and it stuck. I remember as a kid, probably the first name that I recognized in comics was Neil Adams.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of old Batman comics laying around. A lot of his work. A lot of old Batman and Superman stuff. And it was just knock your eyes out, gorgeous artwork, And as a little kid, I would take my granny's wax paper out of the kitchen, and you could see through it, and I could use it like tracing paper. And we're talking like 4 years old, 5 years old. I'd lay around on the kitchen floor tracing Neil Adams' work. And it just I can't remember. Excuse me. I can't remember life that I wasn't drawing.
Gotcha.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
So transitioning from that and everything, like, what made you to all of a sudden like take the drawing from like being a fun thing to like actually wanting to now do it for a career? Because you not just do artwork, but you do animation as well. So get into a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, I've actually been a professional artist since I was 19.
Very cool.
So I want to date myself here on it, but that puts me at 30 years in now. Now when I was a kid, my father saw me drawing so much, and I progressed pretty quickly from tracing stuff to figuring out how to draw stuff, and it was rudimentary for a kid, but it was kid level, but I was obsessed with it. and I showed a lot of talent, a lot of promise. I think back then, my dad noticed it. So when he would be, I always tell people this. My dad would be outside working on a car. Little 7, 8, 9-year-old me would come out. Hey, Dad, can you show me what you're doing? Can I help you out? He'd tell me, no, son, you get your ass back in that house and work on that drawing because that's what's going to take you out of these hills.
Yeah.
And he was right. So I've ended up building a life out of that. And he always encouraged me and pushed. Like, he could see that I had something, and he pushed on the development of it in a really positive way.
Mm-hmm.
So that when the time came and I was on my own, that's what I pushed into doing.
Yeah, I really picked this as the thumbnail when I went to look for your work and for the whole comic you're working on.
That's not even my work right there.
Really?
Alternate covers. Yeah.
Man, I didn't even know that was yours. I apologize for that.
Yeah, that's one of the other guys on it. If you go look at the Kickstarter page, there's a bunch of
Man, I feel bad now. I thought that was your work.
No, that one's, I forgot who that's from.
Maybe just bring it up. Should have did more research. I apologize for that. Now I feel silly.
That's all right. I spent most of the day, we were kind of rejigging a number of things on the Kickstarter page,
mm-hmm.
And stuff was kind of bouncing around a little bit. So
that's the problem with so many people doing variant covers. You don't know who's who.
Yeah. It's not my favorite thing in the world of comics these days, but it is what it is.
Because I mean,
if it weren't for variant covers, me and Rich wouldn't have met. So there's that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
That's actually how he and I got hooked up. It was we were both with the same publisher a couple years ago, and they were doing a retailer exclusive for somebody.
Gotcha.
And I was the artist that the retailer wanted to do a cover for Cult of Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah, and with that and everything, when you got that message for the Cult of Dracula, was that like a dream project? I get to work on something like horror related and spooky. And
honestly, I've been at it so long that there aren't many dream projects that come along. I mean, most of the time, it takes some of the magic out of it, but
yeah,
I do the stuff for a job. I mean, it is a job at this point. I've been doing it for so long. It doesn't mean I don't love it, but it's funny. Like, I'm excited by the stuff, but then I keep this really kind of brass tacks attitude about it because at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, if I'm being brought into a project, it's probably because they want to make sure that they actually get something done on time.
Yeah, that's true.
Because and a lot of times I get brought into things late in the game, and it's like it's kind of a blessing and a curse. I get a lot of work because I'm fast, but it also means I get brought in at the tail end of things a lot, or after somebody has dropped the ball on something, and I consistently bring things home for people and all that. But yeah, it doesn't really allow me a whole lot of time to really sit back and kind of enjoy the nature of stuff until it's all done.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I just bust my chops at it, and there it is. Yeah, there's some of my pages.
Well, I can tell you this: I really love the black and white work, and I
love doing black and white. I love doing black and white and the ink washes like that. Going back to some old, again, Bernie Wrightson and Steve Ditko influence.
But what I could really love and appreciate, not just the Bernie Wrightson style, but you really captured the way to how to draw a motorcycle, because sometimes people are adding too much detail or too less detail, but it's trying to find the right middle ground.
Yeah.
And A lot of times, like with Ghost Rider, the bikes has evolved over the years with his bike.
Yeah, something I like. If I ever got a chance to draw Ghost Rider, man, there is no way that for me Ghost Rider wouldn't be riding a dual tank 1963 Triumph.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that was one of the things that Rich asked me before asking me to draw this book. He's like, "How do you feel about drawing motorcycles?" I'm like, "Do you want them drawn right? You want them drawn right? Come to me." I know it's cocky sounding, but I got a lot of uh, 3 older brothers who love their motorcycles.
Well, not the thumbnail, but what really piqued my interest was the motorcycle and just the actual action pace of the pages, because I always say it that one of those things that you can have great dialogue and artwork that like really captures something scary, but if the artwork isn't telling the story without you reading the bubbles first, then you're failing at what you're trying to do with comics.
Yeah. You have to be able to do image to image storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And that's why this page right here with the whole like vampire chasing him on the motorcycle and just the whole fight scene, beautiful transition.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the stuff that I enjoy the most, and it's so funny. People often ask me things like, how long does it take you to do a page and all that? And the funny part is like, I will labor, like the stuff people think takes a long time, like all the little details and all the line work and all that kind of stuff, really does not take me long at all.
Yeah.
But I'll spend three times the amount of time on nailing down my layout with thumbnails, doing the thumbnails for my layout and what the storytelling is going to be before I get into any of the actual rendering.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you could have like a beautifully rendered image, but if it doesn't tell the story, then what's the point?
Yeah. Well, also too, that you could understand this, it's like trying to work with black and white, or with even with some comics where you have black and white, but you're putting like maybe a red in there or other colors, kind of like what they do with Sin City and stuff like that.
Oh, I love that.
But really capturing and showing how beautiful black, white, and gray could really bring a picture to justice without having to add so many colors to it. And then adding detail too.
There's a funny thing about it too, because I like before this there's a book of my own called Apocalypse Girl that I shopped it around for a couple of years, and I bounced the thing through 2 different publishers before landing on a third that became its home, and all 3 of them insisted that the book be in color, even though I had originally done it in black and white and gray.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and did it in color, and it looks good in color, and I'm happy with the colors. I mean, I did them myself, but I really prefer the gray. But I think that in the last, I'm going to say 20 to 30 years, there's been such a hard push to and rightfully so, to expand the readership of comics and to bring in more of a female readership. And for a whole battery of psychological reasons, women generally don't respond well to the black and white artwork.
Yeah.
I think Walking Dead may be the exception to that. But most of the time, it's like women tend to want that color, and color just appeals to them more. Whereas
unless you're a woman that's like into horror.
There's actually biological data showing that women actually see color better than men do.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because I mean, like most of the people that I ever meet who like the black and white or the black and white with gray like that. It's almost always guys.
Yeah.
So I wonder. I don't know. The thought just dawned on me. I'm like, I wonder if that's why, maybe a part of why black and white comics have sort of, diminished so much in the last couple decades. I don't know. It's something to think about.
I don't know. Also, too, it's just depending, I guess, on like the way people are, because we've had a guest on the show, a friend of the show, and she does a zombie comic, and she prefers her comic to be black and white. She does
Oh, cool.
she does the writing. She has an artist, but her comic is all, black and white. Sure, she's doing a color version of the stuff, but yeah, she loves black and white. So
I really prefer black and white most of the time.
yeah. And it's like with me, like with my work, I try to have it where I try to find ways to bring in both. So, but we'll talk about that after the show, because I wanted to make it be all about you.
Well, with Reign of Dracula, this stuff, there's a color version of this that's done.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is on Kickstarter. Okay, this is a little complicated, but follow me for a second. It's written as a 6-issue series. Okay?
Yeah.
6
Mm-hmm.
24-page issues. What we're doing on Kickstarter is 3 48-page issues.
Gotcha.
And then and those are all going to be in the grayscale ink wash look. And then when it's broken into the 6 issues to go through Diamond and go to retailers, those will be all color. Because we kind of thought that the doing the black and white would make something unique for Kickstarter. So, and then I think that after we're doing 3 separate Kickstarters for the first 48 pages, second 48, and third 48.
Yeah.
Now, I think we may do something special after that, combining those together into one black and white edition, thick version for everybody. So, but I've got a young fellow from here in Paducah doing the colors on the what would you call it, the comic shop releases of it, and
gotcha.
He's doing a really good job of that. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of nifty.
So you're saying like you've been in the business for 30 years. But with that, do you ever feel that it's like, okay, I'm tired of drawing this, this, and this. I just want to draw this? Because sometimes, as other artists say, when you make your artist profile, draw the things that you want to draw for a living. Don't draw something just because you think it's going to make money. Yeah, it's important, but if you don't want to draw animal portraits for a living, don't make that be your main a majority of your profile.
See, I'm the exact opposite of that. Exactly the opposite. I'm like, you need to show that you're capable of drawing anything.
Gotcha.
If you actually want work, you got to show that you're capable of drawing anything, that you're willing to draw anything, and that you can draw anything in a timely manner without being too much of a pain in the ass to work with.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can agree with that.
That to me, that's how you make a career.
Yeah,
and
true.
It's like I watch enough YouTube that I catch a lot of the advice from folks, and some of it makes me kind of laugh a little bit. Like it's like like the advice of only draw what you want to draw. Make sure your stuff is only what you want to draw. I'm like, that's fine. I mean, if you can find people who only want to hire you to draw what you want to draw, that's fine. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Because from my experience in the real world, that ain't the way it works. I mean, the first professional gig I ever got, I was 19 years old, and I was drawing a coloring book of the Energizer Bunny in 1990.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a coloring book of the Energizer Bunny, and the levels of hell I had to go through to get that gig
Mm-hmm.
blow your mind. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's it's been a trip, dude. A
Oh
real trip.
yeah, I bet.
But yeah, and I was drawing comics from '93 to '90 full time from '93 to '95. Primarily working on a barely circulated vampire comic called a Shadow Cross.
Mm-hmm.
That every once in a while somebody will pop up for me with a copy of it, and it blows my mind every time. But worked on that, and I worked on a couple of things for a company called Illusion Studios, doing these kind of horror slash. It was like horror superhero hybrid stuff. It's kind
Yeah.
of cool. And but this was about the time the industry in the mid '90s decided to kind of take a giant dump on itself. And
Mm-hmm.
like the comic book industry is one of these weird things that about every 5 to 10 years it decides it's just going to let loose and just let it run down its own leg for a while.
Gotcha.
And I was there during one of the nastiest downturns of the industry. And mid '90s, man, it there were people who were making huge amounts of money who out of nowhere ended up couldn't get work.
Yeah,
And
that's very sad.
and those of us who were on the lower end of it, like I said, I started at 19 years old. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't doing this stuff, son. So I ended
Right.
up I pivoted away from comics and went to got into doing advertising artwork and uh, storyboarding,
Mm-hmm.
and from that ended up moving into doing artwork for collectibles. I ended up drawing. I drew a shitload of stuff for back in the mid to late '90s. Shitload of stuff for NASCAR and the NFL,
Very cool.
and um, you know, and really in 1994, because I had this thing. I was like, if I want to work in comics, I have to be able to do as many different jobs as I can, and I have to. I don't want to ever be unemployable.
Yeah.
So I'll pencil, I'll ink, I'll color, I'll letter, I'll do whatever I got to do.
Well, doing work for NASCAR probably helped your skills as a artist for making vehicles in comics.
Yeah. Well, it did, but the primary thing they were interested in me for was my ability to do likenesses, because
Gotcha.
I was doing a lot of likenesses of the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that was a hot thing for a minute. It was strange, and I was doing like if you remember back in the day when you'd have like fast food chains would have their plastic cups
Oh
with
yeah.
artwork all over them of
Mm-hmm.
it was printed artwork, so it had to be drawn
Yeah.
of
Miss those days.
yeah. And well, I was the guy who was drawing a ton of that stuff.
Damn.
I drew a metric damn ton of that crap, and a lot of times I didn't even know what object my artwork was going towards. They would just
Until
say,
you went to a fast food restaurant and like, damn, there's my shit.
"Dude, I've it's wild the places I've seen." I'm like, "Hey, I did that." It's
Mm-hmm.
like that's been a regular thing for me pretty much my entire career.
Yeah.
But
Well, with
they,
well,
they
with
would they,
now
they would
being
they would
like,
they would give me specs, like they'd say we need an image of this
mm-hmm.
roughly this layout and kind of composition, give me some notes, and we need it this size. Okay,
Yeah.
I have no idea where it's going, but this was around the same time that comics were shifting to doing all computer based coloring, and the
Mm-hmm.
computers were becoming more of a thing in comic production. And I scratched together money at the time to and taught myself to build a computer.
Very
Built my
cool.
first computer, and then started teaching myself. I believe I was on Photoshop version 1,
Wow.
and taught myself Photoshop. But at the same time, this machine was DOS. There was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff I had to run in DOS, and I taught myself how to build 3D models via code, like actually how to code them from a database, like a database of where all the vertices go, and I'd have them plotted out on graph paper and translate that into the spreadsheet, feed that in, create a database from it, feed that in, and in 3D Studio DOS, compile that stuff into the faceting and yada yada, build models out of it. I think I was doing Star Wars mods for Quake 1.
Very cool.
Yeah, this is back, like I said, 94, 95. And that combined with the advertising artwork and all that, I ended up starting to get work in animation. And I think I was 22. Yeah, at about 22 years old, I ended up as a art director for a media company in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And there's couple weird years of that, doing art director, being an art director. Actually, I was art director for 3 different companies at that time, and did a ton of animation and all kinds of crazy stuff there. And then broke out onto my own in 2001 with a focus on building 3D monsters.
Very cool.
So, and the way that all spins back into comics is there was some software called Poser that I had been not just using, but I'd actually hacked the stuff. There was a handful of us who had reverse engineered parts of the program to allow it to accept third-party content. And we would trade this content around, and that eventually became one of the earliest places online where you could download digital goods, like you could buy and download digital goods.
Yeah.
And out of that, there were starting to be some folks in comics who were using 3D models and things like that as references sometimes. And then that bled over into places that were starting to use 3D for different kinds of comic book related animation.
Yeah.
So by 2001, I migrated over completely into that stuff, and ended up having clients come to me from the world of comics, not even people coming to me from comics, not even knowing that I had started out drawing comics.
Yeah.
And it was very strange. I ended up never drew a comic book with the guy, but I ended up working with Alan Grant.
Very cool.
It's bizarre is what it is. It's really
Very cool.
weird. Really, I worked with Alan.
Everything comes to full circle at times,
Yeah, I ended up for a time. I mean, I shouldn't say for a time. I still consider the guy a friend, but he's been so busy in good ways for years. He probably doesn't even think about me anymore. But there was a little while there where I was pretty tight with Liam Sharp, and I ended up doing a lot of work for about 13 years with a studio out of England that was that Alan Grant was involved in. One of the principals behind it was Doug Bradley, the guy who plays Pinhead.
Yeah.
Like Doug and I are still on a first name basis, through all those years. I actually had him on the phone with my son once, which was hilarious. So yeah, my little 10-year-old loved Hellraiser.
Yeah.
And so one day I got Doug on the phone. I was like, "Hey, Doug, do the voice, man. Do the voice for my son." He's
Gotta love it.
He's like, "All right." And I was like, "Hey, kid, come here. Somebody on the phone for you." He's like, "Somebody on the phone for me? What the hell?" It's like, "Here, just answer it." And Doug gets on there and goes, "Hello, Killian. Greetings from hell, little boy."
That's awesome.
And it was like it was this great moment.
Right.
Personally, it was one of those little things that's like, okay, you can't buy this shit.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, man, it's been a wild time. I ended up working with Brian Haberlin back in, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, starting out in like 2012 through 2015, I think. Um, I did a lot of 3D stuff for him that he then used to do overpaints on for his books Anomaly, and I can't remember the other books now. There's been a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But and it was in a conversation with him at the time where we were just kind of shooting breeze for a minute, and I was like, man, I was like, I've never stopped drawing comic book stuff. I was like, it's what I love the most. It's really what he's like. Then do it. He's like, why aren't you doing it? I was like, because I got this. I got to do. I got this. I'm doing all this stuff. He's like, you should just come up with a book that you want to do and just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Put it together and do it. In whatever time you can afford to do it in, and then put that out there. He's like, I think you'll do all right. He's like, you really should be in comics.
Yeah.
And that's what that it's really how my book Apocalypse Girl was born.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was Brian was encouraging me with that, and I put the thing together. I think I worked on that thing a little bit at a time over the course of like 5 years. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's 6 issues that I did everything in. I was a writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist, and cover painter. And I just worked on it a little bit at a time and would show some of it here and there. Ended up getting, a couple of publishers on board anyway. And yeah, ended up putting the thing out. And, I mean, now I'm planning on doing volume 2 of it next year.
Very cool.
So,
Congrats.
and yeah, in the last year or so, I've almost fully transitioned to full time in comics, and not and it's not really doing as much with the other stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I want to be. I mean, at this point, like I said, I'm 30 years in as a pro,
Mm-hmm.
41 years old, and I'd really like to spend. I personally see myself as having at least another good 30 years ahead of me, 25, 30 years of a
Yeah.
career.
Why not?
And I'd like to spend the rest of it doing comics.
Very cool. Well, I
So,
definitely hope so. I mean, from your work, I really enjoy it, and I can see the birdie rights, and I can really see like the old school like horror and like really cool elements that time period from like the 80s and 90s like really brought in, especially with the motorcycle work. Just really great stuff.
well, I appreciate that, man. Probably another one of my biggest influences going back to I guess, late 60s, early 70s with Esteban Maroto
Hmm.
from Vampirella.
Oh yeah, got some comics of that.
Man, Esteban Maroto, that guy, there's this design work that he would do.
Yeah.
There's so much crazy stuff that he would do there. And I'm with what we're doing on Reign of Dracula, there's a bit of that starting to be able to show through, especially when I get to do a lot more of the stuff with the female characters.
Hmm.
I can really kind of channel some of that stuff in there.
Yeah.
So
Now
that's
with
yeah. Go ahead.
Reign of Dracula, like you plan to do this is the final issue from what I read, right? The final like story arc.
Yep.
Like with that and everything, where you said you came on with the earlier, did you do the other like have part of any of the other books, or was it this
On
is
the
like
other
your big
books, on the
no?
other books, I did. I think all I ever did on them was I think I did one variant cover for
Hmm.
them,
Gotcha.
and that was a. I'm really proud of that piece of artwork. I wish I had it where I could put tossed up here for you.
Yeah.
And like so many times when I've done covers on stuff, it's like, wow, I
Hmm.
really like this, and the publisher never bothers to send me my copies.
Yeah.
That
Gotcha. Oh, that's
damn time.
bad.
It's aggravating, really, especially when like one day, like a year or so after it came out, I was like, I wonder. So I started looking around just to see if I could buy a copy of it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The only place I could find one was on eBay for $250.
Wow.
Like, well, at least it's flattering, you know.
Right.
But
Now with Reign of Dracula and everything, when you were working on this project, was there anything that you really loved about drawing about this, or not even just drawing it, but like the story itself that really piqued your interest? Because, you know, even though you're doing this for a job, certain projects you really gain a good like love out of after you do. It's like, okay, I took this job, taking this job I just did because, you know, it helped pay the bills, but this job I really enjoyed and made a big impact on my life, and hope that I get to work with this writer again.
well, it's interesting in a way because you know, there were two volumes before this. There was Cult of Dracula and Rise of Dracula.
Hmm.
And initially, I mean, like when I did a variant cover for an issue a couple years back, I honestly had no idea what. Like, I got a description of what they wanted to see, and I did it, and I was like, okay, cool. Here, I did, and I got paid. There it was.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there was actually a snafu with the art in that part of the dealer exclusive deal was they were supposed to get the original art, and
Hmm.
when I got an address to send it to, I actually sent it to the writer instead of
Ooh.
the shop I was supposed to send it to. So there was a little snafu there, and we had to juggle things around and get it in the right hands. And that's how
Yeah.
I ended up getting in contact, and we started talking, and we hit it off real well.
Hmm.
Uh, Come to find out, dude was he was about to do a signing. I lived on the other end of Kentucky at the time, over on the eastern side, and he was
Yeah.
going to do a signing at a shop here in Paducah that
Hmm.
was part of a. You could literally say that uh, I am drawing Reign of Dracula because of a tornado. Uh, because
Interesting story. I want to hear more about that.
in 2020 there was a tornado that wiped out half of the city of Mayfield, Kentucky.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing
Oh
about
yeah,
that.
it made big news everywhere. I mean that town, dude, that town is still screwed. It's I mean, and I actually live near there
I
now.
mean, me being from Missouri, I know all about tornadoes and how bad they could do.
Oh yeah,
Especially Missouri is part of Tornado Alley, just like Kentucky.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was one of those hand of God tornadoes that just wiped
Hmm.
it off the map, dude. It's fucked up. Pardon me. And
No, it's all right. This is a horror show.
dude was but yeah, Rich was doing. He was part of an event in Paducah that was a benefit for Mayfield, and they asked
Hmm.
if I'd be interested in coming down and signing Apocalypse Girl and doing stuff there.
Yeah.
And, and come to find out at the event, I was the only Kentucky artist there.
Wow.
It was interesting, but Rich and I hit it off, and you know, it was a good event, and a number of things surrounding that event caused me to pick up and move to the area.
Hmm.
And anyway, you know, Rich and I stayed in touch and did stuff together, did some shows and things together. And last summer, he was prepping for Reign of Dracula, and he asked me if I would do the A covers, you know, the ones that are going to go to shops. And
Yeah.
we got to talking about them. I was like, oh yeah, dude. I was like, dude, these things need to be paintings. And here's what I'm going to do. I was like, I'm going to do these giant paintings for this, right? And they're all going
Hmm.
to connect. It's going to be badass. So last summer, these paintings are in my shop, and I need to find somebody to buy them and give them a home because I ain't got room for them.
Right.
They are 3 feet wide by 4 feet tall,
Oh wow.
and they're
Yeah.
and attached together. So together, it's a 4 foot tall by 18 foot long painting.
Oh yeah.
It's enormous. It's crazy. It's one of the craziest damn things I ever did. I don't know what possessed me to do it. Most of the work on, or a lot of the work on the thing actually had to be done with the stuff mounted to my barn.
Hmm. That's
So
cool.
I was outside in 95-degree heat doing basically a giant mural that was going to cut apart into comic book covers.
Gotcha.
And
Very cool.
but I did the paintings, and we debuted them last summer at Fan Expo Knoxville, and got a lot of interest in them. And it was kind of funny because they literally had to wrap all the way around the booth to be able to show them together because it was so big.
Awesome.
It definitely stopped some traffic.
Oh yeah, for sure. I bet.
So,
So with you, I was
I
gonna.
thought that was going to be the end of my experience with Reign of Dracula. You know, I'll do the
Yeah.
covers, we're done,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a paid gig. And then I ended up some months later. Rich was working on this new book he had called Prometheus in Chains, and
Mm-hmm.
he had come to me and wanted me to do both the A and B covers for it, but he said
Yeah.
he wanted me to really reach into my to channel your inner Bernie Wrightson. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did, and did these covers. And after those, well, let's see, did those covers. I'm trying to think of the time. Oh man, there's been some events the last year that kind of mess with things, but
Yeah.
he I think I was most of the way done with those covers, and he asked me if I'd be interested in just doing all the interior artwork for Reign of Dracula, and I was like, sure, yeah, why not? You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we. I mean, and initially for me, it was very much a hired gun sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, Rich is a writer who really likes to work with his artists.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
Which
fine.
is important.
And I'm an artist who actually would. I'd honestly rather be a writer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. If I could just make my living writing the stories and not doing the artwork, I'd probably do the writing and cover paintings. Just because you know I get burned out.
Mm-hmm.
But and the writing, I just enjoy writing. But
Yeah.
you know he's a writer who likes to work with his artists and give us a lot of leeway. And so we ended up talking quite a bit. And I think I haven't seen the final scripts for the last couple of issues, but there should be some stuff in there where I had a pretty big influence on it with some. It's It's going to be a trippy damn book. It's already the first issue is a trippy. The whole thing's just weird. There's like
Very cool.
a whole thing in it where the two main characters from who come into it from the previous books, they're both
Mm-hmm.
already dead.
Oh wow. Yeah.
There's a whole thing of one of them going to heaven and one of them going to hell.
Yeah. I remember reading that in the story. Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
there is some fun. We play around with some fun kind of existential philosophy stuff in there.
Ain't that the best though?
Oh, we get
Like,
trippy stuff.
like that's what I love. Like with my comic, I kind of got the whole thing going on too with the main character being Lucifer's son, and it's just a great idea. Not even with like the heaven or hell thing, but like when people write a comic about Dracula or write a comic about like certain like mythical creatures, but they find ways to take like actual like stories that you would hear from different countries and bring it into the comic where you kind of like have more of a like a deep lore and backstory where you're not like just creating like your own story, but you're like building off of something that people could relate to and just like grab their attention. It's really great stuff. I love when people do that.
When I eventually sat down and I read the first two volumes of Reign of Dracula, there were some things in his writing that kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah.
And I can remember I'd get to a page and I'd read it and I'd be like, oh no, not this crap. Now what are you doing, man? And then I'd get to the next page and he would flip what I was irritated with completely the other way. And I'm like, what is this guy up to? And that was interesting to me. That really made it far more interesting for me, just because simultaneously would, on in there'd be one line of dialogue that I'd be like, oh, what is this crap?
Mm-hmm.
Then it'd be followed by something else that was like, oh, I see what you did there. Okay, now this is interesting.
Yeah.
It was very tricksy. It's very tricksy, and honestly, I think uh, it's very uh, it's pretty daring of him as a writer to do some of the stuff that he does. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he is not playing it safe. Even at times when I'm like, oh, now he's playing it safe. Like I've learned that as I'm reading Rich's work, if I get to a point where where I think, okay, he's playing it safe, he's playing to this audience or whatever, just give it a page or two, and it's probably going to flip.
Yeah.
I think that's neat. So with Reign being the last of the series,
Mm-hmm.
we're really diving into the I guess there's a Jungian sort of, the Carl Jung sort of aspect to the entire Dracula concept that he's rolled
Yeah.
out in books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really fair to call the books a reimagining of Dracula per se, because it it is, but it's almost more of an expansion of the idea than it
Yeah.
is a reimagining,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes the idea of Dracula, and for a lot of reasons the concept of Dracula, and then applies it to, I mean, what I get out of it anyway, and what I bring to it artistically, is there's a lot of this. If you're familiar with Jungian psychology and his archetypes and all that, there's a
Yeah. I got
huge
you.
presence of the dark mother in
Mm-hmm.
there, which is, and Mother Dracula is the dark mother.
Yeah. Lilith.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a little weird for me working on something that uses that name, because I have a daughter with that name.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the book. Like I don't envy him writing it. It's because
Yeah.
he's put the story where this is where it needs to go in order to finish,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a hard finish. It's a difficult place to finish. So uh, on the writing end of it, it reminds me quite a bit of early Sandman.
Oh.
Yeah, like Seasons of the Mist era Sandman.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's kind of the ballpark I think we're playing in, and that's there's, I mean, there's like a section of it, a big 2-page spread where a character, one of the main characters, wakes up on her way basically to heaven,
Mm-hmm.
and she's being escorted by this kind of this ethereal woman on a horse who changes forms a bunch of different times on the way.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
it's and the forms that she changes into are chosen from different mythologies.
Oh, I like that. That's a
Yeah,
great idea.
there is a ton of that. Of course, throughout the series too, there's different vampires pulled from different world mythologies.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite one being, because I'm a big Japanophile, the Jirogamo.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Jirogamo was one of my favorite characters in the earlier books. Let's see, we do Jirogamo, we do the Cherokee Deer Woman.
Mm.
That's a big one. See, there's Kali. Good Lord, man, there's a bunch. Sekhmet, yeah, Sekhmet from the Egyptian, and Kali from
Yeah.
India. Yeah, it's neat, man. It's kind of neat,
Yeah.
and artistically, it puts me in a position where I get to do a lot of wild stuff in this book. So
That's cool.
yeah, I mean, dude, there's a in the first book, there's a 2-page spread where a chick is on her way into hell, and hell is represented across 2 whole pages as what I translated it into was like, you familiar with MC Escher and his weird kind of, nonsensical geometry that loops back on itself and stuff.
Yeah.
I did an MC Escher inspired hellscape.
Yeah, and see, that's awesome.
It's
as an artist, as an artist too, you could relate, and I feel it's important. Like when you're doing artwork, you kind of want especially if you're doing a 2-page, you want it to grab the reader's eye where it's going in a certain order, where they're not like getting distracted. They're looking at the whole thing and a starting point to a finishing point, because you're trying to tell a story. So if you're having a piece of artwork that's moving around and swerving around like a snake, you want a big distinction of where the head ends and the tail ends. So yeah, man, I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I'm while I'm talking, I'm gonna see if I can sift through some stuff, and I might have a place where I can find a copy of that. So I would not be averse to putting it on screen, because it's pretty nifty.
Before we get into like asking you questions, because it's about that time, with you starting, like, been in the business for 30 years, how do you feel with now comics being like indie creators having a platform with like Kickstarter and stuff like that? Like that has probably helped indie creators so much throughout the years than what you had like with the 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah, dude. When I came up in the business, this kind of thing was unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Just this, and it's still a weird concept for me. I mean, Reign of Dracula is doing a Kickstarter right now that's literally the first Kickstarter that I've been involved with.
Yeah,
and not, it's still kind of an alien thing for me.
Well, and I don't know if you ever thought about doing this too, but it's like, I know DC has done it now, where you get a fan base, but it's like not even with Kickstarters, but like how big web comics have come now than what it started with. Like with DC Comics, they have like their own like Batman web comic on Webtoons, and it's like just crazy.
So bizarre, totally bizarre.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if I can do this in here or not. Is there a way to share a screen from here?
Yeah. Yeah, like you should be able to see where it says share. I don't know about on your tablet and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll do it on the tablet.
Maybe not. I know you can't do it on a phone, but I'm not sure about a tablet.
Yeah, I don't think it'll do it on the tablet. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Real crap. I wonder if...
Well, you're definitely more than welcome to come back on the show.
Can you pass something through the chat, like an image?
Maybe, or you could send it as a link.
I'll tell you what. Let's come on. Watch me sit here and screw this up. I'm gonna grab a link to this from Dropbox, and I'm gonna send it to you that way. I'm just gonna toss it to you in the chat, and if you want to pop it up on here, you can.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, because you can send it through the private chat or through the live chat.
Let's see. So I'm in the SteamYard studio. Is that the private chat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should say private chat. Yeah. They'll let me know when I got a message. There you go.
Yep. I just sent that through there. So you can pop that open if you want. That's the 2-pager I was talking about, going into hell.
All right, let me see. Oh, so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Let me see.
It was a pain in the ass.
Oh, I bet it is. I bet it is. Let me see if they'll let me do it. Share screen. Do Chrome. Windows.
While you're working on that, I'll drop a fun little factoid on you about this book.
Oh man, I don't think they'll let me do it because it's a private area. You know what I'm saying? Because you're allowing me to share it, and you're not sharing it with the rest of the thing. Oh man, that's horrible.
You could just download it from.
Oh, you know what? Let me see.
Yeah, I'd say just download that from Dropbox and open it there locally.
Yeah.
And there's another book. I think it's on shelves. If not, there's been some questions going on behind the scenes with the publisher on it. But if you're familiar with Dirk Manning,
yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, he has this series called The Tales of Mystery. And, it does a lot of Cthulhuoid stuff, and then he does a bunch of books for Source Point Press. And I just finished up a 4-issue series with him called Homestead. That's a werewolf western set in the westward expansion with a bunch of Lakota lore, and it's God, that book was a labor of love, man.
Yeah,
it's wild, and I think the first issue should be out somewhere. I don't know. Like I said, my understanding is there's been some up in the air with the publisher. May end up not getting any floppies and just go straight to a collection that'll come out in the spring. But yeah, I don't know. Once it hits that into things, I usually not involved much anyway.
Yeah. Let me see if I could get it up. I don't know if this is it. We'll see.
There you go.
Yeah, just beautiful, beautiful work.
Thanks,
like man. Amazing work. And while we're talking about this, we'll get into some of the horror questions. With you as an artist, and you said you love Japan work, how do you feel about how not even just with horror movies, but how Japan is really capturing and shining in a great way with their horror manga? I don't know, one of my favorite comics from there is a Uzumaki.
Yeah, I mean the stuff from Junji Ito.
Yeah, Junji Ito. He made a Uzumaki. He's great. I love his artwork and his storytelling.
This is funny because when you've done the stuff this long, everything kind of goes back into history a little bit. So in all that time, remember I was saying I worked with a studio with Doug Bradley and Alan Grant. Well, the other principal of that was a guy who became my best friend for 13 years until he died. Named Tony Kurozumi Luke. And if I'm getting this right, I think he's half British, half Japanese. And he was actually the first quote unquote non-Japanese person to be published by Kodansha.
Oh wow.
And the property that was published by Kodansha was a thing called Dominator. What I worked on with him for years was animated versions of Dominator. So, and I actually worked with a gentleman named Yasushi Nirasawa, who was part of that with him. And Nira comes from working on Devilman.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's like with the Japanese stuff, it's like, dude, at one point as a professional, I literally knew and was known by more people in England and Japan than here in the US.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Especially if it has to do with the supernatural and horror. They're big into that stuff.
Well, so my whole take on it, I know some people in the West get a little salty about how, you know, Japanese comics and manga are overtaking the West and blah 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 and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, dude, if they're kicking our asses, it's because everybody over here has their heads stuck up superhero asses and aren't making the kind of stories young people want to read.
Exactly.
So
Facts.
it's like don't blame them, dude. They're going to the market and they're bringing the market what the market wants.
Yeah.
It's like people are like, oh, you know, they're like, it's the style. I'm like, well, if the visual style is part of it, because a lot of it's beautiful, and there's a culture in Japan and in a lot of the places, a lot of the Asian countries, that there's a culture that still values skill.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, I feel like, and don't get me wrong, like I love my country, and I'm probably one of the biggest, you know, crazed balls. Sometimes people call me a righty or whatever, you know, weirdo, gun toting, love my America kind of stuff. I mean, dude, I'm getting ready. Deer season is here. Yay.
Yeah.
But
love some deer jerky, or some deer and some chili.
Hell yeah, man. But you know, one of the things that I feel like we have drastically lost and we need to get it back as a culture is our love of and respect for skill and the ability. I mean, it seems today, it seems like in America, the only skills that really are lauded are like skills in sports. You know, I don't know, maybe acting, maybe certain areas of music a little bit, but not really. Not even, you know, especially even in music, that stuff's gone. It just seems like, you know, people don't value skill anymore, and the ability to render a product at a high level. Whereas, you know, the people that I've worked with out of Japan, you know, it would be considered almost dishonorable for them to put out something less than their absolute best.
Yeah.
So
agree.
You know, it's like when you're in a culture that says get it out the door no matter what, just get it in, get it gone, get it in, get it gone, get it in, get it gone, and that's trying to compete with a culture that says make every line count.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna hold up. It just ain't gonna happen. You're gonna get your ass kicked. And I feel like, you know, I feel like that's where, I mean, there's a lot of American comics I just can't. I'm just no. Most of the stuff that I end up looking at anymore, it's indie comics. Uh, Maybe some stuff out of Japan here and there, and bande dessinée out of France.
Yeah.
So you know, and a lot of that I think comes from, you know, comes from Marvel and DC having a stranglehold on the industry, so that the truly good, innovative stuff doesn't get a chance to reach, you know, the market that it possibly should. Whereas all the stuff, you know, the manga stuff has kind of taken end runs around everything else through other venues. It's an interesting set of problems to analyze for sure.
Yeah. Well, this artwork again is beautiful. You could tell the story without having to have dialogue in it. Beautiful work. I mean, it probably looks great color, but this definitely does not need to be colored.
My favorite thing about this 2-page spread is how you can see her running in different parts of the.
Yes, that is what really piqued my interest.
I was like, I'm gonna have her running right here. Now she's running over here. You know, it's just like it. And for me, it was reminiscent of the movie Labyrinth.
That's what I was thinking.
That was a big inspiration for that.
Well, you know, that goes with my next question. Like, talk about like how Japan is doing stuff and America isn't. Like, don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of great horror movies that came out recently that I really enjoyed, like story wise and everything. But you know, and sure, people would say horror in the '80s was gory too, but not everything has to be torture porn related. Like
Yeah.
that's what, like, I talk about it again because I'm not a really big fan of the movie series, but there are fans out there. I don't like Human Centipede, but there's an audience who enjoys that. I
Yeah,
don't. I
that's
don't.
to me. That was just nah, no,
But
not
it's like when you're just showing gore, 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 it's like there's no real story, and it's not really horror that's like making you be at the edge of your seat and jumping you out of your seat. It's just making you not be able to hold your food down.
yeah.
And
It's just trying to make people sick. And
yeah.
it
So with movies, what is your favorite horror movie of all time and why?
all time. Ooh,
And
ooh.
it could be recently or it could be like
That,
grown up as a kid.
that's one of those things that the question may change depending on the day you ask it.
Yeah, true.
But like right now, when you said it, the first thing that pops into my mind, probably because I was talking about it earlier, is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes. Oh
That
my gosh.
that
Especially
movie
the
is so
ending,
good. Yeah,
where you realize that, yeah, he was part of the book. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Spoilers, people, but the movie's been out for a very long time.
1993 that came
Yeah,
out.
a movie that I probably
93.
should have watched as a kid, but my dad allowed me to do it.
Oh yeah, I watched, good old in the 80s, VHS tapes of horror. I used to go and rent a stack of horror movies from a local video place on the weekend. That
And
was the
as an
thing.
and me, who does my writing and artwork, I really miss video stores, not just by going out every week, but as a kid and even as an artist, not just the posters, but it's like you would go to the horror movie section and you're just like, I don't know what this movie's about, but the front cover artwork
Hmm.
is so like mind blowing awesome. It
Oh,
just
dude,
makes me
I'm
want
gonna
to get
drop
it.
one on you. Do you remember In the Company of Wolves?
Oh, I think I do.
The cover of that had this chick in like a little
Yeah.
Red Riding Hood, but her mouth is wide open as the muzzle of a wolf is
Oh,
coming.
yes, 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 yes.
You can't forget that image. Can't
Mhm.
forget it.
No.
Or there was a movie called Dolls. I remember that
Oh,
cover.
Dolls. Yes, I
Oh,
love that movie with a passion. People, we'll talk about this movie a little bit. People, you need to watch that movie because the front cover is a doll. She has no eyes in her eye sockets, but the eyeballs are in her hands.
mm-hmm.
And just the idea that these dolls are real people who these evil like toy makers put the souls in, and it's just a great transition, especially when you see the biker chick, like she's dead but you see her at one point where where her face is like porcelain like, and she's holding up her own eyes because she's slowly transitioning to a doll. Great movie. Oh man, that's the 80s right there.
There's so much of that stuff that, I mean, and like for me now, growing up, my favorite was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
And
see, the first horror movie I ever watched as a kid that really drew me into horror movies was Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
oh man, that was a good one. Uh,
Yes.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I was a no, I did not get to see the first one in the theaters. It was on VHS, but I
Hmm.
saw the rest of them in the theater after that, and it was, oh, dude. And even Wes Craven's New Nightmare, you know,
Yeah.
came back to, like, Wes Craven's New Nightmare was one of the most intelligent horror movies I've ever seen.
Yes, it was. I remember going seeing that. Again, I was too young, but I was allowed to go there to see it, and just such a great idea with the whole like demon entity taking on the whole Freddy Krueger form. An
Yeah.
idea, just great, great work.
Well, it was meta before meta was a thing,
Yeah.
and it had similarities to my favorite aspects of In the Mouth of Madness, where it's that kind of reality bending, the real world wrapped into the story world and back out kind of thing. And I really love that stuff. Anything that plays with the idea of reality as narrative,
Yeah.
reality as narrative, blah blah blah. Rinse and repeat. That is just such a trippy thing to get into.
Yeah.
And anything that does that has, the instant it does it, it's immediately horror. Even if there's nothing gory in it, even if it's sci-fi, even if it could be a daytime soap opera, and the instant it does that, it's horror.
Yeah.
Because it's messing with the way you perceive reality, or messing with ideas about the perception of reality in such a way that it can become unsettling.
Yeah, where it becomes psychological, and that's what's even more scarier than the whole torture porn. Where it's psychological, that's where it's true terror, because it makes you think, and it makes you like really process, like maybe this could really happen.
Now,
Or
the thing that made me really like Werewolf by Night, though, compared to some of the stuff, it was just nice to go back to just some straight old freaking monsters.
yes, exactly.
I mean, as an artist, I love drawing monsters. I've made a living doing monster related stuff, like I said, for 30 years, and it's so strange to me sometimes how
That's why the Monster Squad is a great movie.
yeah it's arguably the best version of the Gill Man ever.
Oh my gosh, yes, I definitely agree there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even though I do mostly horror, probably the biggest thing that got me started in all this stuff, between comics, was comics and Star Wars. Because I mean, Star Wars, yeah, it's sci-fi, but when you look at everything that was going in, it's basically a monster movie.
Yeah.
It was, well, it was a mythological story in the foreground, and the background has all these monsters.
Well, speaking of,
aren't even really a part of things most of the time. They're just, it's like monsters as window dressing, but it made everything interesting.
Well, speaking of monsters, we're talking about that. We'll go to the. Oh, still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm kind of bent over on my couch, and
Gotcha.
I have to stretch a little from time to time. So just a fun fact I'll drop on you.
No. So with monsters and everything. Oh, that's all right.
I have to kind of stretch a little bit because Reign of Dracula is the fourth or fifth book that I've drawn since having a stroke.
Oh wow!
I had a stroke in February.
Yeah, that's not fun.
So I was completely paralyzed on my entire left side for a while. And, this hand's still not back. So, and I have to.
I understand.
While kind of give it a little tug.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I definitely understand that. Like, yeah. While trying to learn how to be a professional artist, I develop a movement disorder. It's a sister disease to Parkinson's. It's called dystonia. So, it twists my body up into like a pretzel at times. So, yeah. But I definitely understand your pain. You're like trying to do something you love, but your body doesn't want to work anymore.
Well, when they were putting me in the hospital, I remember I had had my iPad there, and I was working. And one point, I look over at a nurse. And I'm like, "Ma'am, could you try not to shake me?" Because I was still drawing on my iPad while they were putting me in.
Yeah, I hear you.
No, dude, it's been a trip. But
Yeah.
so yeah, you didn't lose me. I was just kind of leaning back because I have to kind of
No, it's all right.
give a good
So,
stretch.
speaking of monsters, we'll go to the OGs. Out of all the Universal monsters, the Mummy, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, what is the most monster that you love the most? That you really like, oh, I really love this character, not
That
just the story, but
that that one's
like the
easy.
design. Yeah,
It's always the Wolfman.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Wolfman is it for
Can't
me.
go can't go wrong with that. Me, I love Frankenstein monster, but that's probably because I love the whole idea with like Bernie Wrightson with
Yeah,
Frankenstein Live Alive, where it's more he's not more of a monster, but like even the '80s depict, he's basically a tragic story. He
yeah,
doesn't know who he is because he's made up of different body parts. So it's like, do I know how to play the violin, or the hands that are attached to my body knows how to play it?
I think when I think of stuff like that, usually my thinking is, which one would I enjoy drawing the most?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I feel like I would. I love werewolves so much. I would love to do a werewolf book. Well, shit, I just did what I'm saying. I just did a werewolf book. I'd love to do more werewolf books. But
Oh, I got a next question for you then. What do you think is better? Not just like artwork wise, but like story wise. Do you prefer Wolfman or werewolf design?
um, werewolf.
Yeah, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, and like, I mean,
Like werewolf, like underworld, where it's half human and half human, or do you I mean, half human, half animal, or do you like
I
more
like
with like
I'll go
American Werewolf in London?
super dork on you and say, World of Darkness, Krenos form werewolf.
Oh, okay, okay.
World of
Yeah,
Darkness. Yeah,
yeah.
the
See, I love American Werewolf in London,
yeah,
especially the whole human transformation where
yeah. Oh, that was
you're
bad.
in pain, and you're suffering, but like where he's like just a giant wolf, you know. I
My
kind of
my
yeah.
favorite werewolf on screen, Dog Soldiers.
Oh my gosh, that's such an underrated movie. I wish more people would
It's
talk about
so
that
damn
movie,
good, man. Dog
especially
Soldiers is the shit.
especially when I can't remember his name, but he was my favorite character. The guy that was literally beating the shit out of a werewolf in the kitchen.
Yeah,
He
dude,
was beating with like frying pans and shit like that.
dude. The design in Dog Soldiers looks like a Bernie Wrightson drawing.
Yes,
Straight up.
exactly. Exactly.
I'm like, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah. And my next question, what I say about why I love writing and drawing horror comics or just reading books or watching movies. Sure, you got your superhero stuff, but with horror, you have so many subgenres. You got the slashers, you got like with Freddy, Jason, and them, you got your sci fi with aliens and Predator. You even could go with like dark fantasies, but
Mm-hmm.
with like in mostly of these horror movies that I'm gonna list came out of the 80s. But what is your favorite 80s horror comedy of all time? I
Horror,
definitely know what, yeah, like a horror
horror
comedy.
comedy. Uh,
I'll say mine first while
yeah.
you're thinking. I'm covering up with the blanket right now. I have the cup. I'm a big Killer Clowns from Outer Space fan. Loved it
For me,
ever since I saw it as a kid. Me and my brother used to watch it over and go over again on VHS tape, where literally the tape broke because we rewind it too much.
I would say, for me, it's got to be Evil Dead.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like any Evil Dead.
Hmm.
Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Good
Yeah.
Lord. I mean, you can't get you. For me, you don't get better than Ash.
Hmm.
Ash is just he's I think he is like one of the greatest characters ever
Oh
created.
yeah.
You know. Uh, oh yeah, man.
I
Yeah,
got another question.
I've met a lot of cool people through the
Oh, I
years.
bet you have. That's awesome.
I've yet to meet Bruce Campbell.
Oh
That
man, that would be great.
yeah, that's one that I want.
So with horror movies, we're talking about that, like, and it doesn't even have to be small monsters, but like outside of the Universal, is there like a '80s horror movie like creature feature that really grabs your interest that you really, really love? It could be Pumpkinhead, it could be
Oh,
Critters, it could be
you
Ghoulies, any of those characters.
you nailed it right off the bat. Pumpkin.
Pumpkinhead, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a CG model that I built, modeled and rigged of Pumpkinhead that is like film accurate just for
Oh
myself
man, that's
around
that's
with.
awesome.
It's nuts. Like Pumpkinhead to me uh, is the coolest character design from the '80s, bar
Oh
none.
yeah,
And,
definitely, most definitely.
that first movie was so damn good. I think I think it may be one of Lance Henriksen's best,
Hmm.
and the rest of the series is just. I feel like they did such a criminal disservice over and over to that character. It could have been done so much better.
Well, yeah, I agree. I even think the same way with like the Critters franchise. Like
Oh, dude,
the
Critters was a hoot.
the first two movies I really loved, but then later on it just got really, really bad.
Yeah.
Especially, and I shows you how big of a fan I am. On my playlist, I have like a horror movie song playlist where I listen to different like music videos from
Oh, Lord.
different horror movies, and I listen to Power of the Night all the
Oh,
time.
God.
From the first movie where like Ugg is transforming into the rock star, just such a good song.
Man, that's so funny. I found myself lately listening to a lot of, you find these mixes on YouTube of people doing this kind of synthwave electronica music inspired
Yeah,
by John Carpenter. And there's a
hmm,
lot of good stuff out there. It's
yeah,
really super cool. Yeah,
yeah,
man, that stuff is it's got a special place, you know. I mean,
hmm,
I'm guessing from the sound of it that I'm probably a little bit older than you,
yeah, yeah.
and
You said how old you were?
I'm 49.
I'm 38. So
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
figured I had about 10 years on you.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I was 10 years old in 1984.
Hmm.
So like I was like when watching Stranger Things, I'm just sitting there like, oh, this, you know, I'm like, I get this. Like I
Well,
get that.
even as a kid, like me, I wasn't around that time, but I have siblings that are like maybe 2 years, 3 years older than you, and just growing up around that atmosphere where like I have older siblings that are showing me this stuff where growing up in the 90s, all the kids were like focused on like this 90s stuff while I was focused on what was
Yeah.
happening during the past.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff back then, and you,
Yeah.
uh, man, there's experiences from back then that I think are very much lost on a lot of people now. You know, the
Yeah.
like back then, I had no idea how important and how much meaning there would be in a video store.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. You
You know,
know.
because now you can just flip around, you get stuff, whatever, boom, there it is, instant
Mhm.
gratification. Back then, you had to go to a place that you physically were at and physically
Yeah.
interacted with people, and you picked through stuff and you looked at stuff and you watched for when things were coming out. There was like a whole thing, and there'd be, you know, sections of the store would have different artwork up about
Hmm.
that section.
Yeah.
There was something very for lack of a better word, it was almost a ritual of sorts. You know,
Yeah.
there was a kind
Well, also too, not trying to stay up late so you don't miss your favorite show. Like,
of, oh yeah,
again, my parents, should allow me to do it, but I enjoyed staying up late to capture Tales from the Crypt
I
because
was
that
I was gonna say
just
Tales from the Crypt, or do you remember the TV show Werewolf?
oh my gosh, yeah, big
Oh,
fan of that.
I loved that with the whole pentagram in his hand and all that kind of shit. Man, that was so
Hmm.
cool, so
Yeah.
damn cool.
Well, also too, it's like you could watch it now on Tubi and a bunch of other stuff, but it's like a lot of people don't talk too much. Sure, a lot of the episodes were horrible,
Oh yeah,
but the whole like uh Freddy's New Nightmares, the TV show,
oh god, yeah, that was so great.
yeah, like
And
it's
do you remember that there were small bits in that show that oftentimes added backstory to the movies?
yes, I love when they do that.
That was so neat. Like
Like they were doing that before Marvel was doing that. Like that was ahead of their time when
yeah,
they were doing that with TV shows and then the movies are connected.
hmm yeah. Freddy's New Nightmare was in a lot of ways. I think it was too smart for the audience at the time.
Yeah, I agree.
That's that seems like a very consistent issue. Is a lot of there's a lot of really good stuff that actually is over the heads of the audience who watches it,
Hmm.
and I would say also soundly over the heads of the audience who doesn't watch it. In fact,
Yeah.
people who will blow it off and say this is just this thing. It's like you really haven't looked at this, have you? You have no idea
Well,
what you're talking about.
well, it's like people always say it's like, oh, the MCU Disney, they done such great work. I'm like, before Marvel started taking all this stuff, like the very first like things I remember as a kid from having a comic book going to a live action was Tales from the Crypt. EC
Mhm.
Comics transitioning to a TV show. And then, before even Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the big hit for Marvel was Blade with Wesley Snipes.
Oh
Like
yeah,
horror has really made a big impact from like the going from transitioning from horror comics to horror media way before Marvel really piqued their interest because they're like, oh, back in the 80s and 90s, comic book movies really didn't do that well. And comic shows, I'm like, yeah, superhero ones, but not horror related. Horror was
oh yeah.
actually doing great.
I mean, it's no stretch to say that Blade really laid the groundwork for the entire superhero movie genre.
I agree, and people don't give it enough credit. I
Yeah,
definitely,
it still holds up. I mean, the
yes, it does.
CG work in it's terrible, but that's a
Hmm.
given.
Yeah,
But I mean, as a movie, all three of those still hold up. Even I mean, the third one's not that. The third one is probably the weakest of the three, and
yeah,
it's still better than a good 8 out of 10 movies we get today.
yeah. And most people would even know that Blade was a Marvel comic
Yeah.
book when the
Mhm.
movie first came out. They all just like, oh, it's a action-packed vampire movie with no Wesley Snipes. No, it's comic book related.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
That was it. And that one. It's funny to me. The they always, and I don't want to get political with anything, but
hmm,
they always want to bring up the questions of representation and all this kind of garbage.
yeah,
And I'm like, it's like you guys are acting like there's never been a black man in a black character on a screen before,
hmm,
when literally the character that laid the groundwork for every damn thing you guys get to do is like one of the bossest black characters ever put on a page or film.
yeah,
I'm like, how do you guys square that? How do you
hmm,
even take yourself seriously when you can act this way when right there it is? It's like this is stupid.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well, I got
just
two more questions to ask you, and then I'll let you go to bed. Because it's 11 here for me since I'm Like I think 2 hours, an hour ahead from you.
Yeah, you're an
But
hour ahead of me. It's 10
yeah.
o'clock here.
So the next question, and it's kind of related, and the question after this has to do with like this question as well. Out of all the slashers, like Candyman, Freddy Krueger, Michael, who is your favorite slasher of all time and why?
Freddie.
See, mine's too. Just the
Yep.
idea of not just him killing you, but what I loved about the movies, especially with like Dream Warriors and going on, is
Excuse
that
me.
he would kill you. Yeah, he would,
Oh,
bless you, he would kill you in a very creative way. Like when Dream Master, the girl that was afraid of bugs, he turned her into a cockroach and then
mhm.
squished her in the box.
Yeah.
Very creative ways of trying to kill you instead of just like the typical Jason or Michael, where he would just cut you with his knife or machete. No, he killed you in like
I
very like cartoon ways.
I always just thought that Freddie had so much more personality than the others.
Yeah. Hmm.
Just raw personality. You know, he was funny. You got, to me, there was this feeling that, like, and like if I ever got a chance to do some kind of a Freddy story, what I would
Oh
want to do
yeah.
is introduce another killer in that world
Hmm.
who he becomes friends with, because he strikes me as a character who could have a friend. He
Oh
strikes me as
yeah.
a character who could have like an entire completely messed up life of
And the
some.
character was so popular they even made a comic book series off of
Oh,
Freddy.
I
And
remember the comic.
yeah.
The I think the comic actually played into things from the TV show.
Yep. Where
It,
they actually had some of the old characters come back, especially
yeah.
with Ash versus Freddy versus Jason.
Oh yeah, that was some
Hmm.
fun stuff, man.
Yeah. But it's
The
like he like even the now the new the Chucky TV show is out, and I'm really enjoying like the whole like backstory of Chucky
I
and
I
everything.
I am out of the loop far enough that I did not
Yeah.
know there was such a thing.
Yeah, 3 seasons of it. It's a very interesting show. I definitely
What's it
recommend
on?
it.
Is it on?
Uh, it's on Sci-Fi, but you can watch it now. Watch the old episodes, and any episode that comes out on, I think, uh, Hulu or Paramount. I can't remember. You'll have to probably look it up, but it appears on Sci-Fi every Wednesday night,
Huh?
and it's been going on for 3 seasons. And what's great is that his daughter is in the show, and like his daughter's just really great actress, and she, like, not giving spoilers, but well, it's not a spoiler, but instead of doing CGI, they basically put prosthetic makeup on her to make her look more like her father, just because she looks so much like him already. So great job to her on her acting skills. But I definitely recommend the show. There's a lot of great stuff to it. But with the Freddy Krueger thing, oh wait, you were going to say
Oh,
something?
yeah. I think back then, you know, like Freddie would have been my number one, and then I would have been torn between Chucky and Pinhead. Of course,
Yeah.
to me, people lump Pinhead in with the slashers, but he's not.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Hellraiser's not slasher material.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's gory, but it's not slasher
Yeah.
material.
But
And,
Freddy, he had the best one-liners. Like I'll do a horrible job, but it's like I love like in Freddy's Dead, he kills
yeah.
the death guy by blowing up his head, and he captures his hearing aid. And he's like, "Nice hearing from you, Carlos." Ah, ha, 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 ha.
Oh
You know,
yeah, dude.
you know.
My understanding, I could be completely wrong, but my understanding is that stuff was almost always just stuff come up with that Robert England would come up with.
Yeah, he came up with the best line that everybody repeats. This is your big break. welcome to prime time, bitch. That was
Oh,
him just like doing it on the top of his head. He's like, I don't like the way they wrote this, so I want to say it this way.
mhm.
And yeah, just magic. Favorite line ever. And yeah.
And now I'll tell you a place that I remember. First time I heard this, I was like, it was an echo of Freddie.
Hmm.
Was the band 9 Inch Nails with the song Piggy?
Yeah.
Because when I heard the song, I was like, it just immediately made me think of Freddie and how he would call like my
Hmm.
piggy, and it was just like, dude, there's
That's
something
not that song,
like,
but one of the other songs that's on my horror playlist, Dream Warriors from
oh,
Dalkin.
Dawkins, dude, oh my god,
That
George Lynch,
such a great band, but the music video to Dream Warriors and just a great song.
yeah, well, and so until my stroke, anyway, I've been a guitar player all my life, and
Oh yeah.
dude, oh my god, that stuff from the '80s with Dawkins, man,
Hmm.
George Lynch, and the man is still a monster. So
Dawkins just came out with some recent music. If you haven't
yeah,
looked it up, like on
oh
YouTube,
yeah,
they came out with some recent music lately.
dude, everything George Lynch touches is badass.
Yes.
He's just one
Yes.
of those. Uh, that's one of those things that I hope to get back. From my stroke, is to be able to get back to where I can play guitar again.
Oh, hope so. Hope so.
So
So
I
the
I would love that. In the meantime, it's funny because I drawing and art is like my third favorite thing to do.
yeah.
Like, if I could make my living making music, I'd probably never draw again.
Yeah, I hear you. I
And
hear
if
you.
I could make my living writing, I'd probably never draw again.
Hmm.
But it's like I'm fortunate enough that I've got drawing there, so that I don't have to have a real job.
Yeah, I mean, if my movement disorder got to the point, I would probably just write and have people draw for me, or just go from like, if not doing comics, go to writing graphic novels for
Mhm.
fun. But after doing this show for almost 3 years, doing a podcast is fun. Like bringing people like you on the show and just talking about like topics that are really fun. You could make a living out of that, like doing events. Like a really good YouTube show I like is Dead Meat, where they do a kill count on horror movies, and yeah, just really cool stuff.
That's
But
oh man.
going to the last question, people like talk about, oh, today now with like Marvel and all these movies, you have a lot of like female headstrong characters.
The
But
well, the
the thing is, even though the
S
'90s,
S SFL, strong
yeah,
female lead.
yeah,
There was an actress recently. I can't. It's slipping my mind right now, but there was a really prominent actress recently who
hmm,
said she straight up is turning down any roles that start out being described as strong female lead
yeah.
because it's becoming a trope.
Hmm.
And
Well, I definitely agree with that. But I could tell you one thing that people forget, and it's like '90s and '80s were all the action-packed movies were yes male leads, but horror movies, the main hero and the main person that kills the villain in are females.
oh, all the
Halloween,
time, all
Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, all these characters, even Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all these
dude.
characters are all
Pumpkinhead.
female leads.
I think
Yeah, Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead, same thing. It's like, it's like the horror genre has always embraced this idea. It's like, well, it's like min maxing. It's like,
Hmm.
if you want to create tension in the viewer, you give them and this will piss some people off, but you give them something innocent or vulnerable, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
take a young woman who is innocent or vulnerable, and you put her in peril.
Hmm.
And traditional fairy tales and whatever, there's a knight in shining armor of some sort that comes to
Yeah.
save her. But in horror movies, typically it's not that way. Typically it's the innocent, vulnerable girl is put in peril, and she has to figure the shit out and
Hmm.
come up with something. She may end up having help from somebody at
Yeah.
some point, but
See, some people they hate that now. It's like, oh, you have like this character where she's a female and she kills the killer, but yet the guy who's like a jock who's strong and everything, he can't take down the killer, but yet somehow this girl who's like weaker found a way. I'm like, yeah, because in the end, smarts overcomes bronze, you know?
it certainly can. And it's funny to me that it's funny to me how many people, like, they fall all over themselves to be like, to tokenize certain
Hmm.
things. It's like they'll tokenize ethnicity, or they'll
Yeah.
tokenize sexuality, or they'll tokenize gender.
Hmm.
And then, so they start from a place of token, say they tokenize gender, and then they hold it up and go, look how heroic we are because we're holding this up. And it's like,
Hmm.
numbnut, dude, that shit, over here in our world, we've held that up for freaking ever without having to pander and be stupid about it.
Yeah.
It's like we could do it and not disrespect everybody at the same time.
Hmm.
And
So,
it's just really, it's really funny to me, like, this entire phenomenon that's hit in the last 10 years or so, really. And I think it really is something focused inside that period. It's gotten, like, it was starting to be a thing in the late 90s, but then, and it kind of percolated for a long time, and then I think around 2016, 2017, it just, the floodgates opened.
yeah.
And now, so thank God for South Park. Thank God
Hmm.
for South Park.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking truth to power right there. Every time, love those guys.
Mm.
So, and it's funny to me too, because I mean, I have a book with a strong female lead. Actually, she's not all that strong at the beginning of it, but she
Yeah.
is by the end of it. And which I guess goes back to that whole horror thing.
Hmm.
And the you know, if 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 me from 2012, when I started flirting with the idea of doing Apocalypse Girl, if that were moved forward to today, I would never have done it.
Yeah.
I would have been like, hell no. I would feel like I was just cashing in on the same, kind of tokenizing garbage as a lot of people do.
Hmm.
So, and it's funny to be saying that, talking about that stuff in the context of promoting Reign of Dracula, because Reign of Dracula has like this whole, some people could look at it and say, well, it's a gender flip Dracula book. Well, you could say that, but you'd be missing the point. You'd be
Yeah.
miss- there's a way
Oh.
deeper point to it than that. I mean, like,
Hmm.
I'll be honest, when I first met Rich and heard from him, like, I mean, when he first told me about his book, he said, it's like a gender flipped Dracula. I was like, groan. Yeah,
Hmm.
I really kind of groaned at it. And then I looked at it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, this is actually legit. This is not, you know,
Yeah.
not that.
Oh, man.
I mean, his Prometheus book, again, is another one that comes off as, you could call it a gender flip Frankenstein,
Hmm.
but it's actually way smarter than just that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really isn't. it's funny. Like he kind of boggles me a little bit sometimes with his writing and how he plays with these things. So yeah, it's kind of funny, but what we got going on Reign is dude, it's different.
Yeah.
It's some funky
So,
stuff.
so with the question that really wanted to pique your interest with Freddie, and I'm curious if it's going to be the same answer for you. But like, out of the whole like '80s franchise, what is your favorite? Who was your favorite Final Girl, and why?
Oh, hmm, probably Nancy.
Nancy? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I could see that. I could
yeah.
see.
I mean, I had the biggest crush on Heather Langenkamp growing up.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, dude. I still go back and watch that stuff, and I'm like, man, she was something else. I mean, just her presence on screen was, they got lucky.
Hmm.
You don't find that
Yeah,
kind of,
she was just a country girl that started to do acting.
yeah, and it just feels like it, man. It just there's there she has always been one of those people who I even when she's doing interviews and things, man, it's like, man, she just seems so cool.
Hmm.
And uh and the way the character of Nancy comes off, and then again when you come back around to Wes Craven's New Nightmare, when it's Heather as herself, uh like kind of sort of reprising Nancy but not really, it it's just, there's just something so cool.
Yeah, it's a shame because
There.
I seen her on an interview recently talking about how when after she got done with the movie on her credits, she didn't list Nightmare on Elm Street because it was the type of thing that you really didn't boast a lot when you were trying to get other auditions. And
Yeah,
now in today's society, if you did a movie like that, you made sure you posted it because people love and people want to know that stuff
oh yeah,
nowadays. But back then, horror movies, even though Nightmare on Elm Street did such a great job and brought so much money in from the box office, horror at that time was still not loved and adored and had a following like it does now.
I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street series gave us Johnny Depp
Hmm.
and Lawrence Fishburne. In
Yeah,
Dream Warriors had Lawrence Fishburne in it. It was one of his
yeah.
early movies.
And I don't know if you have it where you're at, but down here in Florida, besides Comic Cons, they have like Spooky Empire, where it's like a con dedicated to nothing but horror related stuff. Like they've
Up
had,
here, we have uh, oh, what is that called? There's Scarefest in Lexington, and then up in Ohio, there's Horror Hound.
yeah,
Horror
because
Hound.
last year they had the whole cast Reanimator together last year at Spooky
Oh,
Empire.
oh, dude, that as soon as you said that immediately makes me think of one of my other favorite horror movies, and it's more obscure than a lot of stuff. Was a Dagon,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
because
Hmm.
I straight break for anything Lovecraft, anything
Yeah.
Lovecraft. There was a new movie I watched just the other night that was a Lovecraft vibe, or a
Well,
Lovecraft.
don't get me wrong. There's been some crazy like '80s horror movies where it's like, man, what was this person smoking? Like Society.
um, the Relic, that was a good
Yeah,
one.
The Relic.
Uh,
But that was great about when you never got a chance to see like what the monster looked like until halfway into the movie.
yeah,
Now the trailers ruin it for you.
yeah. Or I mean, another great John Carpenter flick was Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
That
Or
that
it's like, yeah, don't yeah, exactly.
that movie was, at the age I was when I got to see that, as a kid.
Mhm.
That thing was freaky damn creepy.
Yeah.
Just
And
really
that's
off the hook.
And not just that, but like Full Moon. Sure, they had
Oh
a
my
bunch of like,
god, dude! I was just watching
yeah. I
something with
love Puppet
Rob.
Master. Like
I was
Tundler, the guy with the drill on the head. He's
oh.
my favorite all time. And they're actually coming out with a Puppet Master like PC game, and I'm like, oh, you get to play as the puppets, just like they're
Dude,
coming out with like a Killer Clowns from Outer Space video game. Sign me in.
oh man. My jam from Full Moon was the Bloodstone series.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
the Subspecies series with
Oh yeah,
Radu.
Subspecies.
Dude,
Yeah,
I was
such a
just
great
watching one of
vampire
those the other
movie.
night. Something with Radu in it. Man,
Hmm.
they did. I haven't been able to find it, but I know that they have a new one. They just did with and they brought back the same actor for Radu and all this kind of stuff. It's like
Wow.
an origin story, and
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to see it yet, but it looks like it'd be interesting. It had a good trailer.
Well, we're about an hour and 51 minutes in. This has been a really great conversation. Thank
Oh,
you
dude,
for coming
I've
on the
enjoyed
show.
myself.
And like I said, you're more than welcome to come back on anytime and just shoot the breeze, because sometimes we just like to talk about like horror movies. And, we could talk a whole hour about just one horror movie that we listed here on the
Oh,
show.
hell, dude,
Like
man.
we could talk a whole hour about The Mouth of Madness just because
Oh
how
yeah,
great that movie is.
dude. That there's so many things in that is one of those movies that, like, I mean, okay, it's 2023, so we are, see, God, it's 30 years since that movie came out.
Hmm.
30 freaking years. I mean, I've watched the piss out of that movie all that time, and I still see new stuff in it every time I watch it.
Yeah.
It's like how do you even do that?
Right.
How the hell do you even manage to do that? It's nuts. Yeah, John Carpenter is I think probably of all the directors in horror, John Carpenter probably has had the biggest influence on me as a writer and an artist, and just taking in the stuff, because
Well, not just that, he's a great composer. I mean, he literally
oh
made
yeah, his
The Halloween song that people love and adore.
great. I mean, he's an accomplished musician, and
Hmm.
I mean, he made John Carpenter's Vampires, one of my favorite vampire movies.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like anything he does well.
Which
Nine
John
times,
Carpenter's Vampires, great movie. And we had Margene on the show. She was one of the master vampires in that movie. She did
oh,
some work
right.
for Tales from the Crypt and some other stuff. So mostly a stunt woman, but she did some acting. But she was one of the head vampires in that movie, and then she was one of the background characters on the horror movie that he did for Mars too. Really great.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man. John Carpenter is such a huge influence. I mean, him and Wes Craven together
Hmm.
just cannot sing their praises high enough.
Yeah.
Good Lord, I mean, Wes Craven's another one that when he passed away, man, that was one that really hit me in the gut.
Hmm.
I was like, damn, dude, it's
Yeah.
it was hard for me to imagine the world without him in it.
Oh yeah. Facts. But it's like, you know, it's one of those things that people like that make a big impact on your life.
Yeah.
And just them, those two alone, they take movies and they come up with great ideas. Like again, They Live, such a great concept.
Hmm.
And Roddy Piper, what he did with that character, great job.
Oh yeah.
I'm here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Yeah, it's funny. There's lines like that from these movies that, like, everybody knows these lines. Everybody's heard these things.
But
They've
they don't know where it's from.
Yeah, there's all these things that have become part of the social fabric,
Pop culture, yeah.
part of the fabric of culture, and people don't even know where the hell it came from.
Exactly.
It's so funny. That's
Well,
that's like one of my life goals, man, is to
yeah.
do something that eventually, maybe something I'll have a thread of pop culture that'll be from something that I've made. We'll see.
Right.
That'd be cool.
Or even see one of your characters like made into a cosplay, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've yeah, that would be awesome. I'm hoping. I really hope that as time goes on, it's like there's the stuff that I'm working on with Rich that I know there's been some interest in some things from that. There was a there was some optioning going on for it. Me,
No, it's
long
all right.
couple years ago, I think there was some optioning taking place for Cult of Dracula for some things, and that was cool. See if that pans out into something someday. And
Hmm.
like the work that I did on Homestead. I mean, like that book Homestead, it would translate to a movie so well.
Hmm.
It's so doable. Uh, and the script that Dirk wrote for it, it's brilliant, beautiful. Um, then the stuff that we're doing on Reign of Dracula, I don't know how the hell you would have to have a Marvel sized budget to turn that into a film
Yeah.
and do it any justice. I just couldn't see it.
Hmm.
Uh, I would probably my big dream would be to someday see uh, my Apocalypse Girl taken to some kind of film. That would be nuts.
Yeah, like even even if it's like animation film,
Yeah,
because I mean, people people are like, oh, I can't wait to see Todd McFarlane do a live action of Spawn that he wants to make. But I'm like, but the HBO animated series was amazing.
it was perfect. It was as
Yes.
perfect as you can get. And
Hmm.
it's funny. It's like everybody in comics. It's like I feel like everybody is in comics because they want to make movies,
Yeah, which is sad.
and there is something to be said for just saying, you know what? No, this is I'm doing something here, and this is what it's for. It can be adapted someday, and that'd be great. But that's
Hmm.
not the point. The point is this work, this format, this piece of work. So, I think I'm in a good place.
Yeah. Well,
No.
it's like, oh man, I'm having a brain fart just because I'm tired. The creator of Guardians of the Galaxy, the director,
Oh, James
uh,
Gunn.
James Gunn, he was on a interview and he's like, if I wasn't making movies, I would have done his idea. He wanted to also be a writer for comics, but he's like, it's a dying media. I'm like, that's horrible. It's not.
Yeah. It,
I
it,
mean, a
it-
lot of people think that, but it really isn't.
well,
Maybe the big two aren't doing great jobs, but the indie community is coming out with some of the best comics that have been
yeah.
out in the
I
recent
think,
years.
and this is me just being a little conspiratorial, but I've been in and around stuff long enough to know that sometimes I'll put it this way. I've been in positions where I have seen firsthand an extremely large company buy
Hmm.
reviews and um, seed conversation in the open market or in the
Yeah.
supposedly open market ahead of a release. Uh,
Hmm.
just to help boost themselves. I mean, there's so many ways they can do that. Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, but anyway, fucking pardon me, fucking Disney. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, we miss the days, or I miss the days, sure, like some of them weren't that great, but it's like after you saw the movie of like the Batman, the Tim Burton Batman or anything, they would have the novelization of the movie. Sure, those books weren't that great, but still.
Yeah. Now, yeah, the Star Wars novelizations were excellent.
Well, yeah, I
Because
had family members that had those, and I read some of those. Yeah.
those were because all of those were approved by Lucas and Lucas's direct people,
Hmm.
and they all had to match what he believed, what he thought of as canon. And I was like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Now I think I think that I'll tell you who it benefits for people to think that comics are dying. Okay, it it benefits Marvel and DC. Now I'm not going to say necessarily that I believe they like to perpetuate that, but I do
Hmm.
believe that the myth that comics are dying is a myth that directly benefits Marvel and DC
Yeah.
because as the two biggest comic book companies, if people believe that the comic book market is dying, then that invariably means that the smaller businesses, the smaller companies
We'll stop.
don't have the resources that
Yeah.
that it literally will help peel resources off of the entire industry that
Hmm.
then gives them less competition. And everybody knows Marvel and DC do not like competition. They've been
Yep.
two of the nastiest, most monopolistic players in any industry that I've ever seen.
Hmm.
It's like I was there, man. I saw it all back in the '90s.
Oh, I have some. I have a friend, uh, Peter Palmiotti. He was an inker for,
Oh yeah, I know Pete. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a friend. Yeah, yeah.
Pete
I
lives
have.
right up the road from me, man.
Yeah,
He's
yeah. I'm friends with Pete. Yeah, Pete
yeah,
would
dude.
tell me. Pete
I've
would
known
tell me
Pete for a
facts
long
about
time.
how stuff is.
Pete moved from Brooklyn down here to Kentucky, man. He lives about an hour from me.
Yeah,
That's so
but
fun.
yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. I mean, you probably know some horror comic creators that I've had on the show. Who knows?
I can
But
remember back in the '90s setting up at shows next to Brian Polito.
gotcha.
I doubt Brian remembers me from Adam, but I remember him.
Hmm.
So good times back when we both had long hair.
Yeah.
Freaking
Well,
crazy, man.
well,
Well,
Stack.
dude,
It's past 2 hours. It's been great. Hope
I've enjoyed
everybody enjoyed the
it.
show. I hope you had a good time,
I,
and
I did.
I
Uh,
hope everybody has a good night.
make sure we give folks the links and stuff. To
Oh
Reign
yeah,
of Dracula.
it's in the description and everything.
Oh hell yeah, good deal, man. So, y'all, if you've God knows if anybody's stuck around long enough during the live stream for this. I think you
Probably
will.
not, but a lot of people watch the after show. I could tell you that.
Cool. But yeah, if anybody's sticking around, man, go check out Reign of Dracula. I think you'll, if you're watching this, you're a horror fan, and I think you'll really dig it. There's a lot there, a whole lot there, a whole lot of heart put in this thing.
I was going to ask, do you have an Instagram? Because I only found your Art Nation and your Facebook.
That's yeah, I it's funny because I get confused all the time about what's what and what I have where and all this.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, because I could
I
add
go
more
on
of
page.
I could add more of your links after the show, in if you put them in the private chat.
Let's see. Uh, it's funny. I go over to Instagram, hit share profile, and it gives me this big QR code thing. I'm like, what the hell is that crap? Let's see. I'm gonna come over here and paste
But
this.
I'll end the show from here. But you can still keep on putting stuff in the chat, so
There you
that
go.
way. All right.
Yeah, I
Well,
just tossed
good.
my Instagram in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody, and you all have a good weekend. Peace.
All right, man. Good night, everybody. Cool.